Hello, everyone. We start our Defacto review with me, Untitled. We highlight three important events of our economic, political, social life of Mongolia for last week. So this time we highlight three events. First, European Day is celebrated in Ulaanbaatar. Second topic is education loan mess in Mongolia. Third is Mongolian bank's IPO in the case of Trade and Development Bank. What is behind, what is missing? These are the three topics I would like to highlight this week. First, about Europe Day in Mongolia. May 14th, Sunday, European Day is celebrated another time in Mongolia. Some 17 countries' ambassadors sitting in Beijing, Seoul, and Ulaanbaatar get together in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, and have met the decision makers, NGOs, and public. On this in particular Sunday, we have been celebrating the landmarks of cooperations in different fields, namely the green economy, forestry, renewable energy, and the rule of law, reform, and trade and economic diversification. These are the industries where we cooperate a lot with the European 27 countries. On one side, on the other side, according to, as it was mentioned by Ambassador in Mongolia of European Union, Mrs. Nikis, that we are, though geographically isolated or far away, but we have a common values that unite us. These are democracy, human rights, and the rule of laws. Yes, it is exactly these, because these values we call European countries as our third neighbor, and along with our physical two neighbors, and we try really to keep that cooperation with this on these values with the European countries, in particular European Union members. So according to the ambassador, these are the values that unite us, and though the European countries try to be really the third neighbors and to participate in further development of the country, Mongolia. On this day, we have seen also some art concerts of some European countries, and many products imported to Mongolia, and also those companies who have benefited from the cooperation with European partners, and they have been introducing their products as well on this Sunday. So it is another good tradition to be in Mongolia, to celebrate our cooperation with the European Union. And this Europe Day is celebrated since 1950s on May 9th, because this Schuman Declaration, that time French foreign minister who had announced about cooperation, called it is called European Coal and Steel Community, and in which they suggested French and West German production of coal and steel under a single authority, to be under the single authority, and it was regarded as a foundation of European Union. Robert Schuman was the foreign minister of France that time, in which was immediately supported by Konrad Adenauer, in that time the first chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany. And a year after, on April 18th, 1951, the 6 founding members signed the Treaty of Paris. And so it created in that way the foundation of European Economic Community. So that's why the Europe Day is celebrated since that in Mongolia. This time is the second time. Mongolia is benefiting a lot from the cooperation with the European Union. Now currently some 50 million euro projects going on in Mongolia, according to the Ministry of Finance. And there are several projects, in particular also financed by EBRD, and it is helping Mongolia to diversify our agriculture and moving to the green economy. And they have been adopted a new plan for cooperation from 21 to 27, and there are many other projects, including the Billion Trees and Food Security Initiative by the President of Mongolia, Khurelsukh, which have been supported a lot by European community. And Ulaanbaatar Deputy Mayor Tumo, he said on that day that Mongolia, just Ulaanbaatar alone, has 40 cities, sister city relationship from Europe. And so it's a substantial partner for Mongolia. And there, as I said, some products were introduced, promoted on that day. So Mongolia is widely celebrating this, our cooperation, friendship with European countries. And this year has a particular importance because the values conflict that brought a war in between Ukraine and Russia. It's very important to highlight and respect those values of democracy, human rights, and the rule of laws that is a founding basis of further development of Mongolia. And we have the same value with these European countries. So that's our first topic. So our second topic is about education law mess in Mongolia. We have been discussing that education law misuse a month or so ago, but recently it was reopened by the former Minister of Mining and Heavy Industry, Mr. Batnairamdas, who himself had graduated from Harvard recently, and he had entered the school in 2013. Since he was from a very remote province of Halta Ayamag, very far place from Ulaanbaatar, one of the remotest slum in the country. And he had tried to obtain some loan from Education Fund of Mongolia in 2013, but in vain. He couldn't do anything, but he understood it is some black box is there. So now, having this high-ranking position in the government, recently retired, the young man had opened very interesting statistics about this education loan fund of Mongolia. And it's like many other, we have some 30 government funds, and I have no doubt that all funds have the similar faith of misusing by people who has close to power and for their own benefit. They have been using public money for their own benefit. In this case, in particular, very high-ranking officials now, current incumbent parliament members, ministers, they have been taking this money from the education fund. Originally, it was supposed to give to children who cannot pay but got entered into the Ivy League schools. There are names, some 30 plus names of universities. Once the person entered into the exams done and entered into these universities, then the state would give the loan. So that was initially the idea of this loan, which was actually funded in 1993, just after the Democratic Revolution. And only from 1997, the fund money was given, a loan was given to people who will study abroad, that the names about the Ivy Leagues come in 1997. And since 2008, it goes to bachelor, master, and PhD students. So initially it was they were after graduation supposed to come back to Mongolia, work at least for 5 years. Then the loan will be regarded as paid. But that rule was cancelled in 2012. So since then, 2012, every loan was supposed to be paid. However, it was annulled by the minister of the particular time for education, and which is regarded now as illegal. And it's very surprising that everybody knew that this loan will be annulled or paid back or regarded as paid only by the parliament. And parliament supposed to make a particular rules for that event, which that rule did not come until now. So it was misused by the Minister of Education at all times. So some statistics are there. For example, 2,368 students got 363 billion MNT since the foundation of that fund. And 421 of them is for bachelor students. The remaining 1,947 is for master and PhD students. But the money is not paid. Instead, it was annulled or regarded as zero by that ministry I have mentioned. So just take 2012 and 2016. It was 4 years ruled by the Democratic Party. 435 master and PhD students loan was annulled. It is about 40 billion MNT. 867 students were also cancelled. Their loan was cancelled from the loan from the education loan because in 2013, in April, the government cabinet meeting had the resolution that the ministry is to solve the issues. So that solving the issues doesn't mean that making this loan regarded as paid or annulled. And there is some statistics according to Batnayram Dal, who had studied very well all this loan and its history. 2008, 2009, there was a government resolution. 111 loan was regarded paid, about 8 billion MNT. Mr. Rantumur, above, I have mentioned about 12 and 2016, 435 loan, total 40 billion MNT was also annulled. 2016, 2017, Minister Cholom Batar, 51 loans, total of 5 billion MNT. 17 to 2019, Mrs. Tsogzoloma, the lady who was a minister, 72 loans of 7 billion. 2019, 2020, Minister Batar Bileg has annulled 82 loans of 8.5 billion MNT. In 2020, Minister Tsitu Suren, 26 loans of 2 billion. In 2021, the current minister, Inka Mugadlan, 89 loans and 10 billion MNT was kind of regarded as paid. And everybody knew that it was not their authority to solve the issue in this way. But however, the ministers have been violating this parliament rule and the law. So I have brought this case especially because how the government is misusing the people, the state, I mean, there are many parliament current members, some cabinet members are there, their children were using the money. It's okay to have investment in, of course, in the children's education in their future, but it is not okay if it's only the decision makers' children, and it is very few small chance for ordinary people, their children, to have the access to this loan. And as I said, it's like many other government-sponsored funds that have been misusing, and thanks to the e-Mongolia, e-governance, now we have a campaign called GLASS, and under this, all this kind of loan who have been using and how much they have been paying back, etc., now it's becoming more and more transparent, which is good news for all Mongolians. And hopefully we will go in that direction. And this is just the start of disclosing many funds that government issued for the last 30 years. So this is our second topic. Our third topic today is about IPO, initial public offerings of commercial banks. Just on May 18th, the largest commercial or corporate bank of Mongolia, Trade and Development Bank, had issued IPO. And this bank is, from the old time when we have had one tier bank, we had only one bank, Mongol Bank, and it has been later on divided into 4 or 5 banks by that direction of activity. And this Trade and Development Bank is based on the international transactions. So it was, and it is now, the corporate largest bank in the country. And it is the 4th largest bank that is issuing IPO, because according to new banking law or amendments to banking law, by the end of June this year, the initial public offerings is to start of all these large 5 banks or commercial banks of Mongolia. And in a year from now, it's just before election, it means the deadline, each commercial bank must have at least 5 owners as one owner or related to that person. Should not have more than 20% of ownership of all shares of any commercial bank. So under all this urgency of deadline, things go now relatively faster, though it was postponed for 1 year, a year before. And probably it was a lobby of another few commercial banks, but however, now the largest, the corporate bank is now IPO. However, it is just only 15, it's only 10% of the 10% of shares. Probably it's additional shares like Han Bank before issued, but out of this 10 additional percent shares, 85% went to so-called strategic investors. And mostly these are the people who probably has the largest deposit or account volume in the bank. And they have been offered, in case of, for example, Han Bank, 100 million MNT per purchasing their shares. So 85% of this so-called additional shares issued, which for IPO is now in the hand of this so-called strategic investors, and the remaining 15% goes public. But however, if the order is larger than they were expecting at the initial price, and they did get good money now, Trade and Development Bank, and their own equity, this just before this IPO have reached 10 trillion MNT, which is very substantial amount. And the first quarter of this year, their just interest rate earnings increased by 7.2%, and it reached 163 billion MNT, and the total profit of this bank increased 45% and reached 47.4 billion MNT. Actually, Mongolian commercial banks are only entity in Mongolia which is making constantly profit every time, even it's the worst economic period. The commercial banks are doing. That's one of the reasons why we need commercial banks to be more diversified in terms of ownership and owned by not one person, or in the case of TDB Bank, almost 80% is owned by Mr. Bilek, who is now under investigation. But unlike many other cases, his court is being postponed from year to year, already 5-6 years. And however, under good management, I understand, of this Trade and Development Bank managers, the bank is producing very good results and promising a lot of profits for the new shareholders. That's one of the cases where Mongolian commercial banks, that's out of all the commercial banks before issued IPO, the price per share of TDB Bank was $9.5, which is the largest, very large price, because it will may attract probably more investors because it's a good price per share. And Trade and Development Bank management is promising every year 40% of the profit will be given as a dividend to shareholders. So big promises. Let's see. The economy is going up, but not to that extent probably, so that this bank can continuously having such a big dividends. Well, okay, it is a good promise. Let's see what's going to happen. But the Mongolian public is asking the Central Bank of Mongolia and the Financial Regulatory Commission to give a proper explanation how come that a commercial bank sells only 5 to 10% shares and becoming truly public, which people find too little to understand. So probably the strategic investors issue, whether they can have a right to sell their shares immediately as the secondary market starts, or it will take certain time to start selling, etc. And why only 5 to 10% gives a name of the being a public company. So we demand as a small shareholders, as ordinary citizens, more explanation from the central bank, governor, and the head of Financial Regulatory Commission to explain more about that. So these are 3 topics I wanted to share this week with you, and you can rewatch our program on the website jargaldefacto.com from Monday, and you can rewatch all other reviews we made, so that you understand more deeper what is the real situation in the country in terms of economic development, social and political changes. Thank you very much for being with me, and see you next time again. Bye.